companies that are utilizing it to help drive are the ones that are much more transformational and having more success.
Hey, what's up YouTube? Jeremiah Hersey here, and this is the next episode of my Node to Pro series. Today it's all about filter context. So we've talked about row context, which is when we're in calculated columns or inside of an iterator function, we have to use navigation functions to reach out past those relationships. Well, with measures and filter context, that is not necessary. All you need to do is have your relationships built and the filter context will take place. And so we'll talk about what that is here today. If you want to follow along, just look in the description down below and click the link to download the PBIX. Let's go ahead and get started. So here we are where we left off in the last video, where we created the total profit measure. And once again, just a quick recap from last time, we talked about the difference between implicit measures and explicit. Explicit are the ones that are user defined, so these are going to be explicit measures, and they are user defined, and the benefit is that we can use them over and over again as we go to build out our calculations. So what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about what filter context is. So if you look over here on the left hand side inside the visual, you'll see the buying group. So the buying group is the category or the field that is going to break down how we want to see our profit. So in this instance, this is the filter. So it's filtering down to NA, it's filtering down to Tailspin Toys, and it's filtering down to Wingtip Toys. So the way filter context works is it's based on the relationships that are defined. And so the key here is you must have relationships defined in order for filter context to work correctly. Okay, so let me show you how this works. So let's take the buying group NA here. So we're going to go over to our data view, and we're going to go to our customer table. And we're going to look at this buying group here. Okay, so I'm going to filter down my buying group to just NA. So once again, this is in the customer table, the buying group column. So I'm going to filter down to just NA, the buying group. What you're going to notice is that the customer key over here is defined as 0. That is the only value associated with buying group NA. So what Power BI does is it looks at the relationships that are created. So here's our relationship, our modeling view here. And if I hover over the relationship between customer and sale, you'll notice that it's based upon customer key. So because it's based on customer key, what happens is the value of NA coming from this table, which has a customer key of 0, is then going to follow this path of filtering, and it's going to filter down the sales table where the customer key is only equal to the value of 0. Then it's going to perform the calculation from the measure. It's going to take the sum of the profit column. So after the filtering has occurred, after it filters down to NA, it then sums up the profit column. So if we look here, we go over to our sales table and we go to our customer key, and we're going to filter it down just to 0. Okay, so now this is what our table looks like as Power BI sees it for that first row. And then from there, it's going to go over here to the profit column, and it's going to sum those up, and that's how it's getting the value for NA. The same thing is true if we were to look at a different buying group. So let's look at Tailspin Toys here. Notice that the customer key ranges from 201 all the way to 1. So 1 through 201 is Tailspin Toys. The same thing would happen here if we go over to our sales table. This is what Power BI is doing in the background. It's going to filter the sales table as it moves to the second row. It's going to filter it. Let's do greater than equal to 1 and less than or equal to 201. So those are the customer keys that are associated to Tailspin. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now what would happen, it would go over to the profit column and it would sum up the profit column for Tailspin Toys. So that's how this filter context works. Whatever filters are in the visual or outside the visual, it's going to use the relationships to filter the information down and then extract the value that you want. Once again, it's just summing up the profit column. Now, we can change the filter context by either adding more information into the visual or by using a slicer. So a slicer is a visual report filter. So if you look over here in the visualization pane, you'll see this slicer option. All right, so one thing, click in the background. Notice how right now my visual is selected. You want to make sure you click one time in the background before choosing a new visual, or it will convert the visual you have selected into a different visual. So now I'm going to use the color from the sales table. So this is where we can choose all the different color options. So as I said before, as we're looking at this very first row in A, the filter context is the buying group in A, is filtering down the data. But as I go to select different options within inside of my slicers or other visuals, notice as I select blue, the values change within inside of my visual over here on the left. And it's supposed to, because the filter context is changing. So what is the filter context for this very first row? We said that the buying group was in A, but now we also have the color blue. So the filter context for this very first row now is now the buying group in A and the color blue. If I were to hold down the control key and select multiple colors, once again the same thing reigns true, but now the filter context is the buying group in A for this first line. Okay. But we also have the filter context of the color blue and red. So filter context is a combination. It's not just one thing. It's a combination of all of the filters that are being applied. If I were to move down to the second row here, to Tailspin Toys, the filter context is Tailspin Toys, blue and red. If I were to add another piece of information here, let's look at date here. And let's bring in another slicer. So we're going to bring in another slicer here. This time I'm going to use the month here. All right, so now as I go to select a month, let's choose the current month here, so February. So now the filter context, it consists of the buying group, the colors blue and red, and the filter of February. So that is the entire filter context. So filter context encompasses everything that is being used from all of the visuals on that page. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I hope this helps your understanding of filter context. Once we understand filter context, we can then move forward with all of our calculations, but we have to have a firm understanding of how these filters change and apply to our measures. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content. I'll see you in the next one.